Poštovani gledalci, dobrodošli u Granice Istoka. Ja sam Harun Karčić. U ovom izdanju emisije analiziramo položaj islama i muslimana u Evropi i odgovaramo na pitanje postoji li evropski islam. Nedavna odluka austrijske vlade da zatvori 7 džamija i protjera 60 imama ponovo je u centar pažnje dovela polemiku o islamu u Evropi. Kancelar Sebastian Kurz je istakao da je Austrija pravna država koja ima zakonska pravila koje regulišu suživot, te da paralelna društva i politički islam nemaju mjesta u toj zemlji. Sa druge strane, predstavnici muslimanskih udruženja odbacuju takve optužbe i kažu da je riječ o manifestaciji islamofobičnih tendencija desničarske vlade, koja želi populističkim izjavama i neosnovanim argumentima izvršiti pritisak na muslimane. Austrijski zakon o islamu donesen je davne 1912. godine, nakon što je tadašnja Austro-Ugarska monarhija aneksirala Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Islam je njime priznat kao službena religija. Izmjene tog zakona 2015. godine određuju zabranu finansiranja muslimanske zajednice iz inozemstva, rad stranih imama, ali i uvode studije islamske teologije na državnim univerzitetima.
Za 6 mjeseci od kako je preuzeo kancelarsku poziciju, Sebastian Kurz je poduzeo oštre mjere protiv migracija i onoga što je nazvao opasnošću od uspostave paralelnog društva u njegovoj državi. Sada svoje napore usmjerava protiv, kako sam kaže, političkog islama.
Mogu da vam najavim odluku Ureda za religije kojom se zabranjuje rad 7 džamija. To znači da se zatvaraju džamija sivih vukova i još 6 džamija koje rade u sklopu Arapske kulturne zajednice.
Osim zatvaranja džamija, mjere austrijske vlade predviđaju i protjerivanje sa kojim su suočeni deseci imama. Za neke od njih austrijske vlasti sumnjaju da su finansirani iz Turske. Na to je reagovala turska vlada koja je osudila ovakve poteze Austrije, nazvavši ih rasističkim i anti-islamskim. Austrijski kancelar Kurz se već duže vrijeme zalaže za pooštravanje mjera. Međutim, čini se da je formiranje koalicije sa ultradesničarskom anti-islamskom partijom ubrzalo taj postupak. U aprilu je njegova vlada iznijela planove da zabrani djevojčicama nošenje marame u vrtićima i osnovnim školama.
Od posljednjih izbora u Austriji imamo novu političku klimu. Sa novom vladom koja je na vlasti nešto više od pola godine vidimo različite mjere koje se preduzimaju protiv stranaca, migranata, islama i tako dalje. Ovo je samo još jedan korak ili još jedna mjera u njihovoj politici.
A upravo je to ono što će interesovati desničarske pokrete u Evropi, posebno u Francuskoj, Holandiji, pa i ovdje u Berlinu, gdje je Alternativa za Njemačku napravila prodor u parlament, zahvaljujući anti-islamskoj platformi.
Šta je evropski islam, ko govori u ime evropskih muslimana i zbog čega su muslimanke negativno predstavljene u zapadnim medijima? Pojašnjava nam Zahia Smail Salhi, profesorica arapskih i bliskoistočnih nauka na Univerzitetu u Manchesteru. Now, Professor Zahia, once again, hello and welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans channel. Now, hello. Is there, in your view, such a thing as European Islam? And if so, what exactly makes it European and what makes it different from Islam practiced in Asia and in Africa or in Australia?
Well, in the essence, there is one Islam, and it has the Quran as its book. And then we speak today about Islams, and that is based on the way we practice this one religion. And of course, there are cultures that predate this religion. They have always been there. And Islam, when it went out of the Arabian Peninsula, it adapted itself to the culture wherever it has gone, whether into North Africa or whether in Europe or whether in East Asia or other places. So I think the genius of this religion is that it adapts itself to other cultures and incorporates these cultures instead of erasing them. What it does, it gives them an Islamic aspect. And this is why today we are talking about North African or Maghrebi Islam in the way it is practiced. And we also talk about European Islam and how this European Islam adapts to its environment. And this is the only reason why we're talking about Islams in the plural, but there's only one religion that's practiced differently.
Now, to what extent is the media responsible for the negative portrayal of women in Islam? And exactly how strong is the Islamic feminist movement?
The portrayals of women have been negative from word go. And in fact, I trace these all the way back to the 19th century when the Even before, because unfortunately the source on which Europe based its image of women is a book of fiction, which is the Arabian Nights. And from that book they took the image of the harem, and then they continued to believe that women live in harems and they are there to satisfy the men, and that on the other hand the Muslim man is portrayed as a man who wants or needs a lot of women, etc. These are all stereotypes. When the French, for example, came to Algeria in the 19th century, 1830, the French feminist Aubertine Auclair, when she came to Algiers, she saw Muslim women and she saw them directly as victims and that need saving by France. But this contradicts the situation, because the French, when they went into Algeria, they didn't exactly go there to civilize, as they claim, or to save anybody. They went to occupy and annex Algeria to France. And in order to do that, they killed indiscriminately men and women and children, etc., like any colonial power would do. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of what missions European campaigns of occupation want to do, and whether they really want to save these women, and whether these women were victims. Speaking of the victim, because they always imagine the Muslim women as being a victim of the man, of the Muslim man. And it's very illogical to save a woman from her man, from her parents, her husband, children, etc. But at the same time, was there really a genuine way to save this victim? However, the image of the victim persists from the 19th century to this day. And it is very problematic when a campaign, for example, to go to Afghanistan, like Laura Bush has declared, to go to Afghanistan in order to save the women of Afghanistan. And this really creates a difficult situation. In fact, not only for a mundane viewer, but also to Afghan women, because they are in a difficult situation because the Americans have come to save them when they have come to kill their men. How does this work?
Yeah. But are Muslim women in need of being saved by the West in the first place?
One good question. In fact, I have a book forthcoming, and in one of the chapters I look into how Algerian women responded to French colonialism. And in fact, they shocked the colonial armies that in the 1830s there were foot soldiers in the resistance, in the national resistance.
Women?
Yes, women foot soldiers in the national resistance. And then a few decades later, a woman called Lalla Fatma and Sumer, she led a rebellion against the French, and she killed hundreds of soldiers, among whom there were army officers. And of course, they were shocked. How could this woman lead an army against French generals? But doesn't that tell a full story that these women are not really victims? Because for a woman to go from a zawiya is like a religious order, to lead men and women in a resistance against the French, that's a big feat. I don't think that is done in Europe. And in fact, after that, she was called the Algerian Jeanne d'Arc. And she herself said, no, I don't want to be compared to any French woman. I am Fatma. I am not Jeanne d'Arc. And I did this to deliver or to fight for my country's freedom. And I am a woman. It didn't matter whether I am a woman or a man. This is a matter of nationalism.
Yeah, but why does the whole debate about Islam in Europe revolve so much around the position of women, polygamy, inheritance rights, and so on and so forth? Why can't we move beyond this?
I think the most debated issue is the issue of the veil, and I think the hottest spot for that is France. But France
is France obsessed with the Muslim veil?
Exactly. Why is France obsessed with the Muslim veil? This is again a long story that can be traced back into the 19th and 20th century. The French were stuck in their stereotype of the veil being another harem, like a woman is either behind the walls, hidden behind the walls, or under the veil. So they thought that let's play this card, liberate these women by unveiling them. And it is shocking and contradictory that in 1958, after Algerian women have led the Battle of Algiers and caused so much havoc, they were still staging group unveilings. As if this is, they actually did not accept the image of the woman warrior who is a member of the National Liberation Army, and they are still talking about a group or massive unveilings in Algiers in order to liberate these women. But these women are liberating themselves through liberating their nation, not through unveiling. It didn't really mean much. So veiling or unveiling doesn't mean much for women today. It's a choice if they want to veil or not to veil. And Muslim women themselves, they don't see their problem as their veil. And personally, when I look into my society and try to help the women in my society, veil is not the urgent issue. There are other issues. Female genital mutilation, that is a big issue we need to solve. More than 90% of Egyptian women are circumcised or mutilated. Isn't that a big problem? So what does that have to be to do with a veil? Honor killings that are still practiced in places like Jordan, Lebanon, is an issue, is a big issue, and it's unlawful and Islamic. That is an issue that catches my attention as a woman from the Muslim world.
But why do people not make the difference between what is culture and what is Islamic? For example, female genital mutilation is more of a cultural thing practiced by many non-Muslim Africans. Honor killings are practiced by non-Muslim Hindus.
Definitely, especially, for example, the FGM issue that is practiced in Egypt, it's practiced by Copts and Muslims. And when Coptic women were interviewed about this, and they said it has nothing to do with religion, it's Egyptian. It was practiced since the days of the pharaohs. And the practice continued to take place regardless of the religion. So as I said earlier, culture always survives despite it being forbidden by religion. And Islam, of course, has nothing to do with it, is innocent. It never said that women should be or should not be, because it wasn't an issue in Arabia at the day. And therefore, to look for an Islamic route for Islamic route for FGM is really not called on.
Now, who speaks on behalf of European Muslim women? Do you see their voices as being hijacked by non-Muslim Orientalists?
The Orientalists have always been a problem in terms of representation. They have drawn their images without having direct contact with cultures. Sometimes, for example, if I speak about Orientalist art, paintings, these people sketched their canvases before they even landed in the Orient. It's all based on preconceived ideas that are circulating very quickly and therefore sometimes just used. Therefore, I would say, in this respect, the Muslim women can be victim of such campaigns, of saving them from their veil. These are futile issues. There are more important issues that women need to be working in order to save themselves from.
Right, Professor Zahia, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very
so
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Islam i muslimani su postali nezaobilazna tema na svakim izborima u Evropi. Sve je više negodovanja prema muslimanskim izbjeglicama, migrantima i većem prisustvu islama u javnoj sferi. A taj strah koriste populističke i nacionalističke stranke kako bi osvojile što veći broj glasova na izborima. Islamsko pravo je za muslimane od izuzetnog značaja, bilo da žive u muslimanskim ili nemuslimanskim državama, jer reguliše njihov vjerski život, međuljudske odnose i ishranu. Profesor Uriya Shavit izučava islamsko pravo na Univerzitetu u Tel Avivu i pojašnjava nam značaj islamskog prava za evropske muslimane. Professor Shavit, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera Balkans.
Hello.
Why did the migration of millions of Muslims to Western lands in the aftermath of World War II present Islamic jurists with a new conceptual challenge?
Well, first, this was the first time in the history of Islam, since the very inception of Islam, that millions of Muslims chose to become a minority. Millions of Muslims moved from Muslim lands to European lands. That is something that counters the essence of Islamic theology. Islam in the end is an ultimate truth from the point of view of Muslim theology, so it should become stronger. If you have a situation where Muslims are occupied by non-Muslims, that's one thing to deal with. That happened throughout the history of Islam. But it never happened before modern times that millions of Muslims chose voluntarily to move from Muslim lands where the laws of Islam are applied to some extent or another, to non-Muslim lands where the laws of Islam are simply not applied and where there is a certain danger to the future of the families, where it's not so easy to maintain a Muslim upbringing for the children. That was one problem. And then there was, of course, the very practical problem. Many of the norms in secularizing Christian lands, where the heritage is Christian and the present is very much non-religious, many of the norms are very different from the norms applied in conservative Muslim societies. So there was this fear that Muslims will face many temptations. And then there's maybe a third issue, which is on an everyday life basis. There are some things you can do in a Muslim country. For example, go to a Muslim bank and take a loan to buy a home that you can't really do in Western countries, where there are either no Islamic banks or not enough Islamic banks. So many issues where Muslim jurists were forced at some point to deal with.
Now, how do the Wasati and Salafi approaches to the religious law of Muslim minorities differ, and do they constitute extensions of competing ideologies?
Yes, they are. They differ and they do constitute extensions. We should maybe say first what we mean when we say Wasati and Salafi, because these words are used differently by different people. I use them in the empirical descriptive sense. That is, I ask, what do Muslims in Europe understand when you say Wasati, when you say Salafi? Because, from the point of view of Muslims, all of them are Wasati and all of them are Salafi. That's the way they would like to regard themselves. So when I say Wasati, I mean people who, to one extent or another, follow the teachings of Yusuf al-Qaradawi and those who follow him in the European Council for Fatwa and Research that is situated in Dublin. When I say Salafi, I mean one specific thing in the contemporary sense, people who follow the teachings of the Saudi religious establishment. These are two schools. The Wasatis are far more pragmatic. They endlessly and hectically search for pragmatic solutions to challenges Muslims in the West face. And you know the most famous example, of course, which is the mortgages fatwa from 1999. Technically, Muslims in Europe have no way, unless they're Hanafis, to find within a Shari premise a way to legitimize taking an interest-based loan. So what the European Council for Fatwa and Research did in 1999 is to argue and to decide that just in the European case, only in the European case, it is permissible for Muslims to take interest-based loans. This is something the Salafis the Saudis very fiercely object. What's really interesting, what were the arguments for the European Council to legitimize mortgages in the European case? So one of them was that sometimes it's very difficult if you have a big family. Sometimes it's very difficult to find a rented apartment. No one would want to rent you an apartment if you have 5 kids, which is sometimes the case for Muslims. So that was one justification. Then there was the justification, if we want Muslims to be able to live close to a mosque, to a Muslim cultural center, to a Muslim school, we must give them that option to purchase homes, to buy homes rather than just rent them. But I think the most interesting justification the Council provided was that if Muslims in Europe don't buy homes, they would not have time to engage in dawah. They would not have time to convert non-Muslims. And if they live in houses that are not maybe the best, that don't look so well, then people would look at where Muslims live, non-Muslims, would look at the places where Muslims live and they would say, we don't want to become Muslim.
is the absence of a central Islamic authority in Europe facilitating the fragmentation of the Islamic legal landscape?
It does, but it's hard to say what's the chicken and what is the egg here. Those who watch us and are not Muslims, they should know something which often people outside Islam don't know. There is no Pope in Islam. The Islamic history, Islamic legacy, Islamic heritage is one of incoherence. There are many different views about many different issues. That is the reality also in Muslim countries. This reality was exported to Europe. It was not created in Europe. We have Muslim Albanians, Muslim Bosnians, Muslim Egyptians, Muslim Saudis and Muslim Indonesians. They attend different mosques. They attend different mosques. Some of their understandings of Sharia are different. That's not because they are in Europe. That's because the realities of Muslim life are different in different places. Sharia developed and is applied in different places in ways that are different.
Now, European Jews have been applying the halacha, or Jewish religious law, in areas concerning marriage, childcare and divorce for centuries now. Do you see the possibility of European Muslims applying certain aspects of the Sharia in Europe as well?
That is a very complicated issue. First, it's fascinating to observe the similarities between Judaism and Islam. Now that Muslims are, for the first time, substantial minorities in Europe, they face many of the challenges that Jews faced 150 years ago. But there is a huge difference in one point. Judaism, rabbinical law, developed largely with Jews as a minority, because Jews were a minority for 2,000 years. Islam faced these challenges to some extent, but in such an intense way only recently. The question, it's not that Jews have a right to apply the personal law everywhere in Europe, and that is something that's taken for granted. I doubt very much the extent to which there is a likelihood that European governments, European societies would allow Sharia law to be applied in their homelands at the given time. Politically, I don't see this as a very feasible scenario. We know what happened in England, when the head of the church, not the head of the Church of England, but the Archbishop of Canterbury, he just implied that maybe Sharia.
There was a huge backlash.
There was a huge outcry because people have a certain understanding of Sharia, and they resent European Christians or European non-Muslims. They have an understanding of Sharia, and they resent very much the idea of Sharia being incorporated in any way. There is a question, and this is, by the way, a question that also Israel as a state faces. What happens when there is contradiction between state law, civilian law, and religious law? Who has the final say? I think that Sharia law could be incorporated into European legal systems.
The way it's applied in Israel or in Malaysia.
Yeah, but in Israel, in the end, the Supreme Court has authority over all the religious courts. So Knesset law, civilian law is always supreme. The question is, if we incorporate Sharia into European systems, would it be absolutely clear that in the end, civilian laws have the final authority? And here this creates a problem. For example, Sharia law has very clear stipulations about adoption. Civilian laws have different stipulations. Sharia law says something very clear about marriage, how many wives you can marry. European law says something different. So
inheritance rights as
inheritance rights. What precisely does it mean to incorporate Sharia law? Can a Muslim jurist accept a situation whereby he is not allowed to issue decisions based on Sharia because state civilian law says something else? I don't really see how these contradictions can be fully resolved, and therefore I'm not optimistic about what you're suggesting.
Professor Shavit, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Nakon napada na SAD 11. septembra 2001. godine, islam i muslimani su među najaktuelnijim temama širom svijeta, a naročito u Evropi i SAD-u. Od Donalda Trumpa do Sebastiana Kurza, političari grade platforme i osvajaju izbore na temelju svog stava prema muslimanima. istovremeno, debate o tome kakav islam sekularna društva Evrope mogu podnijeti i tolerisati ne prestaju. Od nevjerovatne medijske obsesije muslimanima i islamom raste i netrpeljivost prema muslimanima kao i broj islamofobičnih napada. A nedužni muslimani koji su se doselili u Evropu i SAD u potrazi za boljim životom najveće su žrtve. Bilo je to sve u ovom izdanju emisije Granice Istoka. Cijelu emisiju možete pogledati na našoj web stranici balkans.aljazeera.net. Hvala na pažnji.